let's take a closer look at blending blurry backgrounds in colored pencil. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Merry Christmas Eve to everybody. I had a lot of requests from you guys who wanted to see a closer look on how I blend blurry backgrounds in colored pencil. So we're going to go back to the owl that I did last week. If you missed that, there will be an annotation somewhere here and you can go check that out. But today we are just going to be focusing on the background. I'm going to slow the video down and I will explain to you what I'm doing. I am using Luminance pencils from Camcorder and Polychromos by Faber-Castell, and I'm blending with Mona Lisa Odorless Paint thinner. I have a video talking about blending colored pencils. I will put an annotation to that on here somewhere. So if you want more information on how I'm blending, definitely head over and check that video out as well. But let's go ahead and get on to the drawing. The first thing that I want to point out today is that I am working in seriously light layers. I mean light. If you start off by applying much pressure to your colored pencil work, you're going to flatten out the paper, preventing it from taking more pencil. This limits the amount of layering that you can do and in turn limits the amount of depth that you can achieve in your finished product. Applying the pencil too heavily to start off with is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. If you damage your paper too early, it's not something you can really go back and fix. Just about any other mistake you make, you can repair or fix, but damaged paper, once it's damaged, there's no fixing that. I am working in all directions. If I only work in one direction, I'm not going to get the pencil into all the little crevices of the paper. Mostly I'm working in ovals and small circles, but I do occasionally work in diagonal lines where I'm not getting enough coverage. Even though I know I'm going to go over this in paint thinner later, which helps to get even coverage with the pencils and push the color into the paper, it will look a lot smoother if I have good coverage in the first place. While I say to work in all directions, I do want to be clear on one point. No scribbling. Work with a plan, not by randomly making lines everywhere. And again, keep those initial layers very, very light. In my initial layers here, I'm focused on getting the paper covered and having my light and dark areas blocked in. I'm not at all worried about having the perfect color or exact color where it needs to go. All of this will get covered later. I just need to make sure that it's pretty close at this stage. One thing that people may not realize is how many layers it takes to get this look. I do around 3 or 4 layers before I blend with paint thinner, and then I do another 3 or 4 layers and just rinse and repeat until it looks how you want. If you're trying to get this done in a single layer, your end result is likely to look like you did the whole thing in crayons. When I blend my first layer with paint thinner, I use a synthetic hog hair brush that is pretty rough. This just helps me to get the color into all the little crevices of the paper better, but it also has a tendency to lift some of the color given that it is such a rough brush. So my saturation isn't as good as it would be with a tack brush. This isn't a problem for the first time blending, but it is for additional layers. And so when I start When I blend the first set of layers with paint thinner on a large background like this, I often use a synthetic hog hair brush. This is a pretty rough brush that is great for getting into all the little crevices of the paper. For later layers, I'm going to switch into a softer tack brush, which gives me a bit more control of my edges, and it also doesn't end up lifting as much of the color back off as the hog hair brush. But for my first layers, that hog hair brush is really, really nice for getting good coverage. Back onto layering more color, I'm using various shades of blues and purples on top of what I had before. I am still using a very light hand at this point. I'm focusing more on building the contrast and getting deeper blues in. Some of the areas that are going to be really dark blue, I add a little bit of black on top of the blue to deepen up the color. At this point, I already have colored pencil saturated all the way into all the little white crevices of the paper. So I'm working in small circles to avoid harsh lines showing up anywhere. I'm overlapping one color onto the next as they touch each other. Notice that I'm not using the same blue for every light area, or the same purple or dark blue for all the darks. I'm switching it up to build variation on these circles. If all the light circles were the exact same shade of blue or all the darks the exact same, the end result would look like a bunch of flat circles. By having the color vary so much from circle to circle, I'm creating depth. This is going to be true no matter what colors you're using. Make sure to mix it up and have variations fading from light to dark. Even at this stage, my circles do look flat, but that's okay because I've got so much more layering to go. I am still working with a very light hand. Again, I keep stressing that because it is just so important. I'm now going to blend this out with paint thinner again. I've switched to my Taklon brush. This one is a philbert. I really like the philberts because they're easier to use and avoid having your brush stroke show than when you're using a flat brush. When working with the Taklon bristle brushes, I'm not applying much pressure. I've already got the paint into all the little white crevices of the paper, so I don't need to work so hard anymore to blend. I'm just applying the paint thinner with a very light hand. Back onto layering more color, I am using various shades of blues and purples on top of what I had before. I am still using a fairly light hand at this point. I'm adding a little bit more pressure than I was, but not a lot. You can see I'm covering up a lot of the lighter areas that I had before. When you're working in colored pencils, it is always a safer bet to start off lighter than you want your end result to be and darken up as you go. If you start off too dark, it can be really hard, if not impossible, to get the area light again. I am now better defining the shapes in my background. It may appear that I'm only using white, light blue, dark blue, purple, and a little bit of black. In reality, I had at least 20 pencils pulled out while I was working on this background. Variation was really important in getting the look that I wanted here. Something that you want to consider when working in colored pencil, it is extremely time consuming. The background took up a lot of real estate on my paper. I spent more time layering on that than I did on the actual owl. Don't rush through the backgrounds that you're doing just because it isn't your subject. All the parts of your painting are equally important in the end. I'm really starting to better define and deepen the colors of my darks now. Notice how none of the darks have harsh lines as they fade from one color to the next. I'm overlapping everything along the edges. The key to having your background look blurry and out of focus is to not have detail and harsh lines. All of your lines and shapes need to be soft. Even if you have a lot of contrast like I do here, my lines in between each area are very, very soft. After working my way again through the entire background, I go ahead and blend with paint thinner and a Taklon filbert brush. In case anyone is wondering, Taklon is the type of bristle, not a brand. Filbert refers to the shape of the bristles. In this case, the bristles are rounded. You don't need a ton of paint thinner on your brush as you blend. For me, I dip the brush into the paint thinner and then dab some of the excess off onto an old rag before hitting the paper. If you apply a lot of paint thinner to the paper, saturating it, and your paper is not taped down on the edges like mine is, it can warp the paper. As long as your paper is taped down like mine is, when it dries, it should dry flat again in its original shape, so you shouldn't have to worry about it. I am using a low tack tape for this. It is around this stage that I start to apply more pressure with my pencils. When you're blending your pencils by pushing harder, that is called burnishing. Burnishing should be kept for your final layers because it flattens out the paper, making it so that future layers won't apply well to the paper. For this piece, I am using a white from Lumiance to burnish my lightest areas on the background and a light blue Polychromos for the darker areas to get a nice smooth finish. Thanks for watching. If you are supporters over on Patreon, you guys already saw the 2-hour version of this that I uploaded last week for you. So this week I have uploaded a 2-hour version of the little girl that I had done in colored pencil. That is available for you guys now. So definitely head over there so you can check that one out. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+, all those fun social media sites. The links are below in the video description to keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Being that it's Christmas Eve, do you think I should finally throw away my pumpkin that's been sitting on my desk? It's a perfectly good pumpkin, and I feel bad throwing him away. I'm sorry, pumpkin, but I think your life has come to an end. I have issues.